crazy boy. Hi everyone, and welcome back to Waterhouse Forde. Thank you for joining us again. Today we're going to persevere and we're going to try to get the timing gears on, or the timing sprockets essentially, and all the associated bits on the front of the engine. And obviously show you how to set up the time, or basically essentially set up the timing and install the timing chain as well. On our last video you saw us basically putting that plate on, and obviously there was a little bit of a damaged area there. The sealant seems to have sealed up really nicely. Obviously we won't actually know until we start the engine and get it running and get it warmed up, but it certainly seems to have made a very good seal, so pleased about that. I think all to be said is we're going to get on with it, so hope you enjoy and follow along. Right, so to start with, we've got everything laid out that we are planning to work on today and that we should need. So obviously we've got the main timing sprocket. Now that obviously has the weight basket that goes on top of it, and we'll show you how that goes in a minute. And then we've got the small sprocket which goes on the end of the camshaft, and then the various washers and lock plates, etc. And of course the front pulley nut. We obviously will need to put the pulley on as well. Just a couple of things I wanted to mention. When you're cleaning this sprocket in particular, hopefully you can see, I'll just try and get the camera to see, there's a little hole there, and there's basically two holes. I think it's three. There are three holes in that sprocket, and they come out on the outside there. Hopefully you can see that. So there you go, you can see, hopefully that's better in frame now, you can see the hole coming out that side. And basically that, I believe, is to allow oil to exit. I'm guessing it gets thrown up on here and then it needs to be flung out. And I guess it also helps to oil the chain, which is obviously running around here as well. Anyway, bottom line is, make sure that those holes are clear when you're cleaning the sprocket as well. Right, we're going to move on and we'll show you a little bit, we'll talk about each bit as we're going. Okay, so we're at the front of the engine here. We've got obviously the camshaft and the crankshaft, and essentially we need to fit the two sprockets so that they line up, and there's timing marks on each of the sprockets. We'll show you how that does, how that works. There's a keyway. There's actually two keyways in the crankshaft. One is for the sprocket and the other one is for the pulley, which basically goes on the outside of the cover. On the camshaft we've got only two holes, and bring the sprocket, Oscar, it's up there. Bring both of them. Okay, but we can see that in the sprocket we've actually got four holes. Now luckily this is the one that we took off, and we can see by the witness mark that that's where the lock tab, so the lock tab was across these two holes. So we know that that has to go either there or there, and we need to work out which way around it needs to go. Okay, now to do that we would normally have the the rockers on, and obviously the valves in, etc., etc. So what we need to do is determine where this camshaft is going to be essentially causing the valves to number 1 or number 4, but typically number 1, to be rocking. So basically where neither of them is open, as in they're both closed. So how are we going to do that? I'm hoping that you can see this pockmark on the camera. Now what we've got, again, because we're kind of lucky because we're reusing the same sprocket. The reason we're reusing the same sprocket is because there's no undue wear on the teeth, right? So the teeth are perfectly fine. And luckily what we've got is a pockmark on the sprocket as well. So I'm going to trust that whoever put that there did it correctly. And you can see that pockmark is through that hole there, and obviously we've got this one here. So I'm going to go with that, this is the right orientation. If you don't have pockmarks or witness marks or whatever on yours, then what you need to do is turn you have to put the head on, you have to put the rocker arms on, and you basically want to get number 1 valves basically rocking. It's the only way I know of determining which way around this should be. When those are rocking, this timing mark on this sprocket should be pointing to the timing mark on the camshaft as well. And so what we're going to do, we're going to go with what we've got, which is basically that there, and then we're going to line that, we're going to turn this so that it lines up, and so these 2 timing marks line up, and we're going to use that to basically know where to put the chain on. Okay, so let's get going with that. Oscar, do you want to put the bolts on? Now what we're going to do is we're just going to do these loosely, as in just so that they're tight, but we're not going to tighten them up properly, because when we get to putting the chain on, we're actually going to be lifting this sprocket off, putting the chain on, getting it all lined up, and then popping it on. And that's because the chain is probably going to be too tight for us to be able to do it otherwise. Okay, so you want to just give them a little nip with the spanner. Don't go mental, but just so that they're tight.
Basically until it starts turning and I can't.
Yeah, that'll do. Okay, right. So that's that one. Now, what we want to do with the camshaft sprocket, you'll see, hopefully you can see on the camera there's a sort of a fat side and a thin side. The fat side goes towards the engine, right? So it goes this way, essentially. And you know that partly because the timing marks are on this side, and obviously the timing marks need to be visible. But also because you've got this chamfer on the back side, which basically helps the sprocket to line up as it's going on. Now luckily ours actually fits on nice and smoothly, so we don't have to knock it on or anything. But if you did need to, at least you would know that would line up nicely. Now before we put that in, we need to just pop this key in. So Oscar, if you can pop that key into the back keyhole for me.
Yeah.
And get you a hammer. Make sure it's clean.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, what we're going to do now, we're going to pop this sprocket on. Get it into the keyway, push it on, push it all the way. Okay, that's all the way on. Now what we need to do is line up, or make sure that these 2 sprockets line up and that the chain is going to be running true. Now, just holding a straight edge across there, what I'm seeing is we've got a little bit of a gap over here. I can just see daylight through there, whereas that one, and to be fair, it's very, very close. So what we do have is this shim. Now, normally, well, what you do is you either put the shim behind the sprocket or in front of it. So you put it behind it if it needs to move forward, or obviously if that's not needed, you just leave it there on the front so that it's there in case somebody needs it in the future. Why would it change? Well, we've replaced the crankshaft on here, on this engine, and obviously this crankshaft may or may not be slightly different to the one that was on here before. So that's why you have shims. Normally there's more than one, but this engine only has one. Obviously somebody has neglected to put it back on. So unfortunately, to get that shim on, we need to take that key out again. So we're going to just pop that key out. Oscar?
Yeah.
We're going to put the shim on. And before we put the key back, we're just going to put the sprocket back the way it's supposed to go. And measure again and see whether that's any better.
I feel like it's worse.
Actually, that's worse. Yeah?
Yeah.
So we need to take that shim off, and unfortunately that's as close as we can get it. We can't get it to be any more true.
Unless we were to wait. I need the key.
Yeah, in a minute. Just hang on. I just want to measure again. If you, Oscar, can you find me the feeler gauge? I want to see what that gap actually is. It's not. It's very small, but I do want to try and work out what it is. Okay, we just got a feeler gauge, and we're just going to check, see if we can measure that gap basically on this side. So we just hold a straight edge across both. So Oscar, if you try a 2.
Okay.
Or which one have you got?
4, 6, and 8.
Okay, try a 4 then, because it's definitely bigger than a 2. Bigger than a 4?
Yeah. Let's try 6.
Try 6. Still bigger. 8. Is 8 touching on both sides?
It's better.
Yeah. Okay, it's about an 8, I think.
Maybe 10.
Maybe, but yeah, it's 8 or maybe just a bit more. Which I think is probably fine. I don't think you ever, well, I doubt that you're ever going to get it 100%. So, and there is, one thing we can do, Oscar, pass me the wooden mallet there. What we can do is just make sure that the crankshaft, whether that's going to move a little bit. Give me a block of wood, please. So what we'll do is we'll just we'll give this a good tap. Just to make sure that it's back as far as it can go. Right, let's just measure again, Oscar. Just bring your 8. And just see if there's any difference.
Should we try a 10?
Try the 8. I want you to tell me if it's any different.
Okay. Yeah.
It is a little bit tighter, isn't it?
Mm.
Try the 10 now if you want.
Okay. No.
Okay, so it's 8, maybe 9 thou difference, which I think is absolutely fine. Right, so Oscar, let's get this keyway back in, or the key back in the keyway, rather.
Yeah. Not the keyway in the key. Or anything.
What did you do with the hammer?
I found it.
Okay. Okay.
Right.
Okay, right, that's all the way in. Right, now, the next part will be to put the chain on, but before we do that, I just wanted to quickly show you. So, what we would now do is put the shim on, just so that it stays with the engine, basically. And then you've got this, it's called a slinger washer. And that goes on, obviously you can see it's got a keyway there because it has to slide over this next key which we're going to put on. But it basically sits there. Now imagine when the cover goes on, the cover has an oil seal that basically seals around this shaft. And what this slinger does is it basically pushes oil or slings oil away from that seal, basically to reduce the amount of oil sitting around that seal when the engine is turning.
So which way does the oil come from? Does it come that way or?
Well, the oil is just in here, right? If I'm not mistaken. So this is the sump down here, right? You see this opening here. So the oil is basically just sitting in here. It's probably about that sort of level, I would imagine, maybe a bit lower. And you need that because obviously you want the Oscar.
Yeah.
You want the sprocket to pick up oil and basically fling it around the housing, right?
Yeah.
To oil everything. And what this does is it basically stops that oil from coming forward onto and sitting inside the oil seal, just to help the oil seal to seal. But we're not going to put those in just yet. So the next job now, get the timing chain, please.
Okay.
The next job is basically to put the timing chain on. But to do that, we also are going to have to line these up. So we know that one needs to point roughly in that direction. And we are going to have to turn the crankshaft as well to get that to line up with the mark. But we also need to make sure that number one is at top dead center. So in order to turn the crankshaft, we do need to put this nut in.
And we have the big boy.
Yeah. So if you use that to turn the engine just until that white mark lines up with that one, okay? So it's not very far. Once it tightens up and actually starts turning the crankshaft.
That will mean that the pistons will move a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Now what I will do before you go, I just want to put a little bit of oil in there. Just give me a second. Just make sure that there's a bit of oil all around the edge of each one.
Oil it up.
Okay. Watch that mark. Keep watching. Okay.
So number 1 and 4 have come up to the surface.
Exactly. So number 1 and number 4 right at the top, right?
Yeah.
Now the only thing that we can't check at this point is where the flywheel would be in this position. Which would have been ideal because, like I say, if you were to turn that 360 degrees, then the piston will be at the top again.
Yeah.
And we don't know whether that's because it's on the exhaust stroke or whether it's on the inlet stroke. We want it to be on the inlet stroke. So we're trying to think how we could work that out.
Are we doing this in a weird order?
What do you mean?
Would you usually have the flywheel and rocker arms on?
Yeah, well, you can do. I just need to work this out. Just give me 1 second. Okay, so we've got the marks lined up. Number 1 and number 4 are at the top. We don't know whether number 1 is on the inlet stroke or the exhaust stroke. In fact, it can be on either. And the reason I say that is I've gone and just checked the flywheel. The flywheel, basically, if this was a flywheel, you've got a dowel, for example, here and here. And what that means is that you can actually put the flywheel 180 degrees apart, or 90 degrees apart. Well, 90 degrees off of that, and then if you did, then you'd have 180 degrees on the opposite side. The point being that you've got 4 options for the flower wheel, and the flower wheel has 4 timing marks as well. One is, you can see, as a major timing mark, and probably that's the one that they want you to use. So we will use that one when we come to putting the flower wheel on. But the good news is that as long as these 2 are lined up, we have options in terms of the flower wheel. So that's good news. Right, so the timing chain, which is again the Anglo timing chain, A45872. We did mention this in our previous video actually. Sadly we never actually got this far. So anyway, that's the timing chain for the Ferguson. We'll quickly grab that, and there it is. Nice new chain, and obviously it comes with a link which we will need to put on as well. So the point is now to get the timing chain on, and there might be a little bit of movement, and we'll have to see and make sure that it doesn't move too much, if you see what I mean. Right, so there you go. You can see we are slightly, those 2 lines are not 100% lined up, so we do need to just move that a little bit, which actually will tighten this, and I think we're just about there now. Okay, so we've got this clip, and it comes with 2 washers or spacers. One of them goes in the middle of the chain. You see there are basically 2 links in the chain. One of them goes in between, and the other one sits on top and basically sits behind the clip. Most of you have seen these, right? All bicycle chains have them. There's the little clip, and it basically sits inside and clicks on in those grooves. So the challenge with this is getting this clip in with those washers on both sides, and it's almost impossible. In fact, it is impossible to do without removing this sprocket. We can't remove that one because that one has to slide on. The only way we can do this is to remove that one, put the chain together, line everything up, and then basically force that sprocket on. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to, if you bring me the white paint marker, Oscar, what I'm going to do is basically mark where I want this chain to be on each sprocket. So I want that one to be in line with that one, and I want that one to be in line with that one. Okay, now what we can do is take the chain off, put it together, and then take the sprocket off, get it all lined up. We know that if that chain, that link there is in line with that dot there, and that link there is in line with that line there. Sorry, the camera can't see that, it's behind this nut. But basically I put a line on like that, okay? Then we know that wherever we are, well, as long as that one's lined up and that one's lined up, we can push the sprocket on, and it should, these 2 should line up as well. So if we take the chain off, and we'll quickly just join the chain, and then we'll come back. Right, we've now joined the chain, as you can see, and we've still got our markings on the chain. So what we want to do is, first of all, take that cog off, Oscar. Don't turn it too much, just keep it roughly where it was. Okay, we're going to get the chain onto the bottom sprocket. Now you want to get that sprocket into this one so that okay, Oscar, so we've got that on now. So now we can put those on.
Yeah.
Yeah. So get those in. In the meantime, I'm going to take this big nut off because we don't need that now.
So which way is this going to be spinning?
Well, one way to tell, have a look at this nut. Now when you use a crank handle, it goes in there and it turns that way to start. So the engine turns that way.
Is there another way to tell? Because you said one way to tell.
When the fan is on, you can look at which way the fan needs to turn in order to push air over the engine. And generally speaking, if you're looking from the front of the engine generally turns clockwise.
Okay.
Okay. So now we can just put that little, what's it called?
Don't remember.
Spacer. Then then we need the other key in. I'll get this key in. Okay.
These aren't lined up.
No, it turned a little bit, but it doesn't matter because it's now in time, right?
What?
It's timed.
Okay.
Yeah. Right, go on. Hang on.
Well then surely everything has to be set off of that.
It does. Go. Whoa. That's right. Let me do it. Yeah.
Sorry.
Okay. So that's that. Now we can put the counterweights on. One thing you want to check is make sure that rides smoothly inside there, and we'll put a bit of oil on there as well. Oh, there's a bit of dirt in there. But this basket needs to go on. It doesn't matter which way, there's no particular way, it just needs to go in there, okay? So if you grab, up there's 4 little bolts with their washers.
Spring washers.
Yeah. If you get a couple of those in.
Done.
Now obviously these have a spring washer on, so the spring washer should keep them in.
That chain is actually quite tight.
Yeah. You don't want any slack in it. A loose chain can cause the whole timing to slip, and then all your timing goes out. Okay, so that's nice and tight now. So now we've got the, this is the, I don't actually know its a formal name, but it's basically, it sits inside there and it, I'll put a bit of oil on that, and it sits inside those weights. Mind your fingers, just lift them. Just like that, see?
And then as that spins, the weights come out and lift it.
Yeah, exactly.
And then when it slows down, when the engine starts to slow down, like...
There's actually a spring on here. So on the cover there's a spring and that pushes it back in.
So if you were to go up a hill, then the engine would slow down and these weights would start to move in, which would give you more fuel so that you could get up the hill.
Correct, yeah. Or just to keep your engine running the same sort of speed. So you do want these to be nice and loose, right? So it needs to kind of move out. Let go, I'm trying to show something. It needs to sort of move out on under the weight of these weights, right? So just like that, which is perfect. Okay.
It's like an unbeatable game of push the button.
Mm-hmm.
You push it and then it just keeps coming out.
Right, the next job is to put the cover on. So we need the gasket. Oscar, can you get the gasket out of the gasket set? You should be able to find it in there. So it's a very obvious shape.
Bottom gasket set.
Okay, we're just about to put the cover on. We've put a little bit of grease around and we're just going to pop the gasket on quickly. So Oscar, if you want to pop that on. No, that doesn't look right, does it?
Yeah, that's correct.
No.
No.
Absolutely not, so it needs to be turned around, okay? You see you've got, the giveaway is these three holes very close to each other.
Okay.
And then okay, we'll get a little bit of grease on the gasket now and then we'll start on the cover. Okay, we're now, this is obviously the cover. You remember in one of our previous videos we put the oil seal into the cover. We've now got the pulley, and obviously that oil seal rides on this polished face over here in the pulley. So what we want to do is put a little bit of oil on the seal as best we can. Make sure that that's spread nice and evenly. We'll put a little bit onto this face as well. Okay. And then we need to gently work that into the oil seal. It goes easily, but and actually that's why we do it this way. It's so much easier to get it onto the oil seal this way than to try and push it in when the cover is actually on and over the shaft. Okay, so now we'll lift this up and we'll put this onto the engine.
Good day, sir.
Okay, so now we want to put the cover on. We've got to turn the pulley so that it lines up with that key, but that should be relatively straightforward. What we'll do is get that onto the shaft first, and then we need to line it up with the key. Hang on, Oscar, hang on. There we go. Okay. And then, no, we've missed the key. Actually pushed the key out.
Uh-oh. I noticed it was a little bit skew, kind of.
Get that. back in.
Wait.
Get me the hammer, please.
Where is it?
Just tap that a little bit, but try to tap the front so the front's a little bit lower than the back. That sometimes helps. A little bit, not a lot, that's too much. Try that, okay. Oh man.
Uh-oh. Don't turn into Wreck-It Ralph.
Alright, let's try again. Get that onto the...
I'll hold the cover.
I think that's almost on. Where's it? Hammer.
Ooh, back away from Thor's hammer.
That's interesting, that doesn't want to go at all. Alright, let's get the cover. Just hold the cover in place. Not sure why that's not... Maybe that key is too much. Okay, it doesn't look like we're going to be able to do it the way I wanted, so we'll do it the other way.
What's the other way?
Well, just to... Basically, we're going to have to push the pulley on and into the seal at the same time. Because this doesn't seem to want to go. Okay. Right, let's try again. So the first thing is to get the pulley into the key, which it is.
Bang, bang, bang.
And there you go, it's gone this time. So what had happened there, the key had basically kicked back a little bit too much and it was preventing the pulley from going on. But the good news is that when you straighten that up, it basically lines up nicely, which is cool. Now what you've got is you've got this lock tab, which has a what do you call it, like a punch out, which sits inside that keyhole. So that stops the lock washer from turning when that's in. And then of course you've got these tabs to bend over the bolt. There is a very small, very thin washer that goes on there as well, I'm guessing, which just helps the nut to turn against the lock tab and not lock on the lock tab, if you see what I mean, whilst you're tightening the nut. Sorry, the bolt. So we'll get that tightened up. Well, for now we're just going to make it sort of finger tight. We're also not going to lock the lock tabs just yet, just in case we need to move this again for any reason. Now I'm going to get the engine back to top dead center. Sadly it's not playing.
Can I do it?
What?
Get it back to the top dead center.
I don't know. There, that's it there. Okay. So Oscar, if you can hold the camshaft for me, just in there, okay?
Okay. Which way should I be?
Pull down slightly. It's not working, is it?
No, it's moving.
Hang on, let go.
Do you want to do the jamming and I do the turning?
It's not enough leverage. Okay, we'll leave that the way it is for now. And we'll get that tightened up later once we've got the flywheel on, because then obviously you can hold the flywheel and tighten this up. But the point is that's now on. Now we can go around and basically put all the bolts in on this cover. There's one already there. You remember when we were doing the cover, we couldn't get it out because of this. We obviously did take it out, clean it up, and we needed to make sure we put it back. That goes all the way through this plate at the back, and it just has a nut on the back, so that one's reasonably straightforward. Okay, so I think, look, we're going to carry on with that. There's no point us filming that. That's as far as we're going to go for today. Okay, just as we were finishing off there and starting to put the bolts in, I realised that you're not going to get these bottom bolts in with the pulley on. So, to be honest, what you really want to do is not put the pulley on until you've actually put all the bolts on for the cover. So, of course, we're going to pull the pulley off again, get the bolts in, get the cover properly mounted, and then put the pulley on. So look, I think, well, hopefully that was informative. I know there were a couple of bits where we had to think it through. It is all logical. It all kind of comes together as you're doing it. So yeah, if you're doing this sort of job, you know, it's not difficult to work out. Just got to take your time, think it through, and the most important thing is to obviously make sure that your two sprockets are timed to each other. In other words, that they're lined up to each other. You want to also make sure that your chain is tight. You don't want a loose chain in there. Obviously, using a new chain is recommended pretty much every time you redo your engine.
Yeah.
But yeah, look, I think hopefully that was enjoyable. We certainly had some fun this afternoon, and of course we look forward to seeing you on the next video. So have a good week, everybody, and cheers for now.
Bye.